And with that, now I would like to introduce to you someone who needs no introduction, Dr. Lydia Medrano.
Thank you. Well, as Mari said before, I'm the vice president for the Southeast region, which is a region that needs to be developed. It's this area, and we are very well represented here in Florida and in Puerto Rico, and we're starting to work on Georgia. And if you have any contacts in Alabama or Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, I will appreciate it. We need to bring LULAC to those states. So today, I will talk about several issues in which LULAC is involved, from education, environment, immigration. We are in many, many areas that we work on. We create councils, and councils decide what they want to work on. It happens that in Miami, most of the councils work on education. They are mostly educators, and there's their focus. We have other councils that are more involved in immigration and advocates for immigration. Others are involved in environment, Puerto Rico issues, civil rights in Puerto Rico, and so forth. But before I get into LULAC programs, I want to mention that there are 57 million Hispanics in the United States, making up the nation's largest ethnic minority. And as Mari said before, we need to vote for candidates that support Hispanics. You know, even though we are non-partisan, but it happens that sometimes when you're talking about candidates that support Hispanic issues, and Hispanic being the largest minority group in the United States, but it happens that sometimes we kind of fall, but that doesn't mean that we recognize candidates from any party that help or that want the best for the Hispanic community. Latino labor force has grown. Our purchasing power has also increased. The Latina-owned businesses are the fastest growing segment of the small businesses in the country, and Latinas control 30% of the 1.4 million companies owned by minority women in the United States. Here at home in the state of Florida, the Hispanic population is the third largest in the nation. And it varies by county, and I know Miami is had the largest proportion of Hispanics in the state. In terms of civic engagement, more than 13 million Latinos voted last year in the last year election. That was a great improvement for what it was before, right? So choosing not to vote or stand on the sideline is not an option anymore. People need to get involved. Here in Florida, almost 1.8 million Latinos were registered to vote statewide in 2016, and overall, Latinos make up 15.7% of the state's more than 12 million active registered voters. And that's what Mari was saying before, we need to improve that. Even though we have made big progress, but we need to improve in that. But looking into the future, 11,500 young Americans turn 18 every day. And LULAC is committed to registering these new voters so that our voices are heard. If you remember something from today, I hope you remember this, that every 30 seconds, a Latino in the United States is turning 18 years of age. Repeat, every 30 seconds, a Latino in the US is turning 18 years of age. And that's why LULAC has put a lot of effort in voter registration. But registering people is not enough. Then you need to get them out to vote. Because sometimes people vote, but then they don't, they register to vote, but then they don't go vote. That doesn't count. That doesn't help. 9 out of 10 of these youngsters are US born. So 90% are US born citizens, which means that they are eligible to register to vote. No doubt we need your help to pass this message out, that you need to reach out to these young people and to these residents that are eligible to become citizens and try to help them become citizens. Being a resident and having a job is not enough anymore. We need to become more active, more civic engaged, as you said before. You know, this is something that we need to work hard on. In terms of education, in Florida schools today, almost 1 in 3 of K-12 students are of Hispanic background, according to the Pew Hispanic Center. But before I get into the education and what LULAC advocates in terms of education, I want to mention at least 4 of LULAC's major milestones around education. And these include: 1, in 1945, LULAC successfully sued to integrate the Orange County, California school system that had been segregated on the grounds that Mexican children were more poorly clothed and mentally inferior to the white children. And using that excuse, they were not allowed to go to schools. They were segregated. In 1945, I repeat, LULAC successfully sued to integrate Orange County in California. In 1946, in Santa Ana, California, LULAC filed the Mendez versus Westminster lawsuit, which ended 100 years of segregation in California public schools and became a key precedent to the Brown versus Board of Education. So before Brown versus Board of Education, LULAC had sued already in the state of California and had won the Mendez versus Westminster lawsuit. In 1960, LULAC Council number 60, it was just a council in Houston, Texas, worked to transform the Leader School of the 400 to Project Head Start under the Lyndon B. Johnson administration. And I don't know if you guys have heard about the schools of 400. I don't know if you have mentioned it before. You have covered it. Well, when the Mexican children were not allowed to go into the schools, they say they were mentally inferior, they were poorly dressed. The Mexicans in the border created the schools of 400 words, which means they created these schools where they taught Mexican kids 400 words. And with those 400 words, they could go and apply to enroll in school. So that was the beginning of what we call today Head Start. So in Houston, there was a LULAC council in 1960 that started moving that 400 word school into Project Head Start, they call it at that time, and became a Head Start Center. In 1973, LULAC formed the LULAC National Educational Service Centers, modeled after a successful project in San Francisco, California, and today the LENESC, as we call it, LULAC National Educational Services Centers, serve Hispanic students and provide scholarship and have programs like for young readers to encourage reading among young children and parents working with the children in their learning, etc. So in terms of education policy, LULAC believes that universal and quality public education is the foundation for lifelong success and strongly opposes any measure that denies education as a fundamental right, including that of immigrant children. It's education for everyone, including immigrant children, regardless of their status. School curricula and textbooks should reflect culturally relevant teaching methods grounded in research and history relevant to the students. You know, as we know, sometimes it's not relevant to the students. LULAC opposes high stake, and I don't know how much time I have, but I'm going to go quick. But LULAC opposes creating an environment of high stakes testing and over-testing, and also opposes eliminating every form of assessment. So we think that there must be some way of assessing the students, but we oppose the high stake testing. LULAC encouraged Congress to monitor the implementation of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act to ensure that accountability and equity provisions are enforced by the U.S. Department of Education. It requires the states to report data that better reflects U.S. demographics by using U.S. Census race and ethnicity categories, and provide cross-tabulations by gender and disability. Current practices of aggregating data mask the struggles of underserved students, particularly boys and girls. And when you call, you ask for data, you know, that data doesn't exist in certain format, but it says in other format, and that doesn't help the researchers and the people that are trying to assist kids. LULAC is advocates for resources for many, you know, to prevent dropout rate, for closing the achievement gap, et cetera, and I'm going to get into that. I think the environment, we are also working in environmental issues. LULAC opposes the practice of locating environmentally damaging or dangerous sites in Hispanic and other disadvantaged communities, and opposes the disposal of nuclear, chemical waste, and other toxic waste in or near Hispanic communities. LULAC encourages the cleanup of brownfields, contaminated sites in Hispanic neighborhoods. We also support the Clean Air Act, the Clean Power Plan, and the Clean Water Rule and legislation that aims to curtail emissions that contribute to climate change. How many here are from Puerto Rico or of Puerto Rican origin? So, okay, in this Southeast region, Puerto Rico is part of the Southeast region, and I say LULAC is in about 37 states plus Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico, we have quite a big number of councils because there is concerns about the civil rights in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico representation is a civil rights issue. 3.6 million people living in the island territory deserve the same rights as U.S. citizens living in the mainland. The right to vote, have representation and vote in the House and the Senate, and the right to vote for the President of the United States. The federal government collects Social Security and Medicare in Puerto Rico, like you pay here. They have to pay Medicare, Social Security, but when they collect their benefits, they are not the same rate that you collect here. They collect less money. So Puerto Rican, and that's a shame, but Puerto Rican has served in the armed forces since World War I. 9 Puerto Ricans have received Congressional Medal of Honors for serving in the armed forces. Currently, 10,000 people are serving in the armed forces, but however, these 10,000 people from the island cannot vote for their commander-in-chief or president of the United States. So I wanted to bring this up because I know there are many people of Puerto Rican origin that have moved from Puerto Rico here, and when they get here, they can vote for the president of the United States. But when they're in the island, even though they are citizens of the United States, they don't have the same rights. So LULAC is advocating for the equity in the civil rights of people living in the island. In terms of immigration reform, and Mary mentioned something about that, LULAC demands an end to all deportation, excluding individuals convicted of a violent felony, while comprehensive immigration reform legislation is being considered. We need an immigration reform before we start sending people out and doing this all commotion that we have today. LULAC supports also the repeal of the bed detention quota language included annually in the Department of Homeland Security appropriations legislation, which the language says that the Homeland Security is funding 34,000 ICE detention beds. And you know when you put a number, that means that everybody wants those private prisons, they want to get that money. You know, so it's like establishing a quota of people to be detained. We oppose any legislation that threatens the rights of immigrants, criminalizes them or those who assist them, and harms Latino communities. Legal residents and naturalized citizens should have the same benefits due to native-born citizens. We shouldn't have a difference. LULAC opposes the militarization of the border and vigilante attacks on immigrants, as well as the mistreatment of immigrants in the United States and their territories, regardless of their status. LULAC opposes any efforts to construct a border wall. LULAC opposes the use of local enforcement in immigration enforcement. LULAC also will continue a strong opposition to the harsh and inhumane treatment of documented and undocumented persons in private prisons, detention centers, and makeshift holding centers. In addition, LULAC strongly opposes the holding of documented and undocumented minors in any facilities, be it public or private, that separates them from their parents or caretakers. To summarize in relation to in relation to the Dreamers, we oppose any acts such as not allowing Dreamers permission to obtain driver licenses as barriers to, that prevents them from being able to work and go to school. So it's a big barrier. LULAC also urges the federal government to grant these students citizenship after they graduate from college or university. Those Dreamers came here as kids. They don't know any country but this one. They know their parents came from Mexico or somewhere else. It's not only Mexico, because they're undocumented from Canada and other places. And when they go to school and they graduate, LULAC is advocating for them to get citizenship. LULAC also demands that the federal government grant citizenship to any members of the armed forces that have been honorably discharged, as well as spouses and loved ones of veterans. And there have been Hispanics that have served in the armed forces and later on have been deported. That's a shame. So we are following up on that. To summarize, LULAC supports comprehensive immigration reform that provides an avenue for undocumented workers to legalize their status and expands the number of legal immigrants allowed in the United States to meet our needs, the needs of the country. Recognizes that immigrants are an integral part of the U.S. labor force by addressing employment-based immigration needs and reforming the visa system for issuing permanent and temporary visas for high-skilled and low-skilled workers. This will allow workers to fill jobs already available to them and will better position the U.S. in the global economy and the global labor recruitment arena. And I think I've probably run out of time. And before I finish, I want to say that I want to ask everyone to take your phone, your cell phone, and text the word United to the following number, 52886. By texting, you are registering for LULAC alerts on issues that have to do with immigration.
Say the number again.
So the number is 52886, and you text the word United.
United. Text the word United.
United.
Before the numbers.
No. Put the number and then to that number text
You
United.
put the number and then you text the word
So
United.
you want to repeat the number one more time?
And by doing that, you're registering to receive alerts about
Yes.
immigration from LULAC.
Repeat the number one more time, Lydia, so they could get it. Repeat the number.
The number is 52886.
And United. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Lydia Medrano, for the insights and all the work that LULAC does. We need to make sure that education is about educating children. That's it, okay? And I think that is a call to action for everyone in this room, and for you to call other people into action to do just that. Also, second-class citizens does not appear anywhere in our Constitution. So we need to make sure that we continue to advocate and fight for the rights of all Americans, because it doesn't matter where we come from or the color of our skin. Under the Constitution, we are equal, and that is something that we have to fight for. And our military families and our veterans, they do the ultimate sacrifice. And in this healthcare law that is going on right now, we leave them behind. Many of them come back with mental issues, because if we have anyone here who has served in the military, please stand up. And we want to recognize you and say thank you. Because unless you have gone to serve, or you are a family member of someone that served, you don't understand the issues that they come back from serving and having to do the things that they had to do. And one of the things that we do very poorly is take care of the people that serve. And a lot of them are homeless. A lot of them are without jobs. A lot of them end in broken homes because those mental issues are not treated, and our Congress never appropriates for our veterans. So even though they love the soldier, they don't love the veteran, and we need to change that. Okay, so thank you.